Hi, I'm back for vlog number 2 of my trip to Eastern Europe. Since I last vlogged, we have visited the small and large ghettos in Vilnius. We visited the Greenhouse Museum, we visited Kaunas, and we've also visited with veterans from the Soviet War, Soviet and Afghanistan War. And that was the event this past few days that really hit me, and I was really able to connect with while we were there. I really appreciated and enjoyed meeting with the veterans. We walked over to the building and walked in, and they did some formal introductions, and then we each got into small groups of about 5 or 6 with one veteran and a translator. And it was a time where we really just got to have open dialogue and discussion, ask questions, and hear more about their stories. And I just appreciated the fact that we could do it in such small groups and hear a variety of stories. I guess my group was a little bit unique in the sense that I got to hear 2 stories while we were there. The first man I met with, his name was Hulos. He was 18 when he went to Afghanistan and served for 22 months. His mission dealt more with protecting the airport in a variety of different rings, and that's how his story talked about feeling very unsafe when you're in that third ring and you're the first one that any attacks would happen on. And he said that was a point he couldn't talk about. That was too difficult. And you could see it in his eyes and his emotions. And you really could see the trauma of that point. He didn't go too much farther into his experience or trauma. He talked a lot about what life was like while there and what life was like coming back home, and how it was difficult for him to talk about it unless it was with someone very close to him. Then we got to meet with Robertos, who was the chairman of the union of the veterans from the Afghanistan War, and he was kind of almost completely different. He didn't want to talk about anything about the war. He said it was too difficult. He did talk a little bit about what life was like, what did they do in their free time, and he did bring up a few stories about, eventually, which I was surprised about, but were more difficult, about friends. He talked about once a friend of his was in the hospital and another friend came to pick him up and take him back to their base, and he got shot and killed. Or he told a story about a friend losing a limb, but then he also would tell stories about how they couldn't trust the locals because they were worried about them poisoning them or hurting them. And when asked, he said that any questions weren't good. He actually said like they were stupid questions at some point. But Julio said that he had no secrets, but he just didn't like when people asked him about killing. And so to kind of see the 2 different parts of the spectrum from the trauma was really interesting for me. But I think the part I took the most out of was seeing their friendship between the 2 of them, and really the friendship between all of the men there. He did talk a lot about how Julio's talked about how he appreciated coming there. He said he calls them their brothers, and anybody who's a veteran is a brother because they've gone through this together, and so they're able to come to this building and connect. And he said, we can say one word to each other and we just have this connection. We've gone through many of the same things and we're all open to talking about it. And I think that's important when discussing trauma. You always have this connection with somebody, and we've talked about how it's good to have open feelings and dealing with trauma. I think that's important, and I can understand of why it's so hard to talk to someone who has no idea what has happened or what you've been through. And so to be able to go through that with other people, I'm sure they appreciate it, and I appreciate being able to see that connection as well. And I think the building and the actual union ties along with Hirsch and the post-memory, because really that building and the connection they have and the way they shared that with us, that's creating post-memory for me and for all the other students, so that I'm learning from them. My post-memory is from their actual memory, so I'm experiencing it through their eyes. I'm creating this and being able to create that own experience that I can again share it. And so that post-memory from Hirsch, I think, comes into play again with this experience, and I think it will continue to in other events as well. It showed more of the textual part of post memory than what I had comprehended earlier when I discussed it. It really hit me when I was in there with all the pictures, and Robertus was very open about showing us pictures. He wanted to show us the pictures. He found one of himself, or wanted to show us the difference between the uniforms, or he pulled out some money, some Afghan money and some Russian money, and he wanted us to look at that and pointed at pictures around the room. And then his stories were both of their stories were very vivid, and I looked at that as more of the textual part of post-memory than I had in the past. And I think that makes it easier for this second generation of post-memory to be able to understand and to grasp and to really go through it with them again. I could see the emotion in their eyes when they were talking about it, and I felt like I was experienced some of their trauma with them. And I think that's important when it comes to empathy and understanding that. And at the end, Julio said if there was something we would take away from it, it's that war is not good, and that peace is what everyone wants and what can help solve things, and just that war is not good. And I think that's, once you hear that from somebody who's gone through it, it just reiterates to you and makes it seem so much more real. So in a time when our country is a little bit uneasy and there's a lot of things going on, hearing that again and taking that from past history and putting that into the future, I think just continues on with how post-memory is so beneficial for us to understand. So I got a lot out of talking with the veterans, and I really appreciated it. I did not know much about the Soviet-Afghan War, and so to learn about this and to realize and to really put into tangible, to see real people who have gone through it was touching, and I appreciated it, and I'm looking forward to the next few days. So I'll see you next time.